It is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. The sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current, which are directly proportional to the variations in the light beam. The sound track. As the varying electrical current in the photoelectric cell is small, a vacuum tube amplifier is required to increase it to the point where it will operate a loudspeaker. Sound track.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This is the third and final installment of the Gematria, Numerology, and Cipher series. And obviously, it's the Cipher part of the series, since we didn't get to that in the first two. So, I got the usual suspect with me again. I got Lisa with me, finishing off this 3-part series that I had a really good time doing. I learned a lot, found some interesting stuff. It was really I was happy to put this out for real.
Same.
Yeah, I think it was some...
learned a lot.
Yeah, I think it was some interesting work, to say the least. And I will pretty much get it going and start it off. I guess I'll add two people who have not... Well, if you haven't seen the first one or two, obviously you haven't seen the second one yet because it hasn't come out yet. But you should be okay still checking this out. But I do suggest if you're coming across this to check out the first one, the first one or two when you can. And here we go. So I actually, both of us have a bunch of ciphers that we wanted to cover that I think are interesting. And just to be honest, I even think it's wild how many ciphers are out there and how many are still used and who they came from. I mean, a lot of them actually seem to have come from occultists. So yeah. I thought that was just interesting to show as well. Because again, I will reiterate something I've said multiple times. I do question if there's times that we're looking at the English language completely wrong. And I do think that this is a way of that happening. I wanted to get into, the Golden Dawn. I knew from the past that they had some stuff. I thought it would have been interesting to cover them a little bit in this as well. The interesting thing is that the first 2 years of podcasting with the Occult Rejects, I actually didn't learn or cover too much about the Golden Dawn. Which doesn't make any sense to me. But somehow that happened, and I figured this year I'm actually going to cover a little bit about them. So besides this, I will be covering some interesting things about the Golden Dawn. But... to get into it with the ciphers, they do have the rose cross, or some people call it the symbol of the rose and cross. The rose cross is a symbol largely associated with the legendary Christian Rosicrucian, Christian Kabbalist and alchemist and founder of the Rosicrucian order. The rose cross is a cross with a rose at its center, often red, golden, or white, and symbolizes the teachings of a Western esoteric tradition with Christian tenets. The Rosicrucian manifestos were written during the Protestant Reformation in Germany in 1520. In 1520, Martin Luther had a seal made with a 5-petaled white rose encapsulating a heart with a simple cross in the center. Many allegorical and esoteric explanations for the Rose Cross have arisen over the centuries. Some groups, such as the ancient and mystical order Rosicrucians, purport that the Rosy Cross predates Christianity, where the cross represents the human body and the rose represents the individual's unfolding consciousness. Some deep stuff there. Yeah. Some say the Rosy Cross as a symbol of the human process of reproduction elevated to the spiritual. Very interesting. The fundamental symbols of the Rosicrucians were the rose and the cross. the rose female and the cross male. As generation is the key to material existence, it is natural that the Rosicrucian should adopt its characteristic symbols, those exemplifying the reproductive processes. As regeneration is the key to spiritual existence, they therefore founded their symbolism upon the rose and the cross, which typify the redemption of man through the union of his lower temporal nature with his higher eternal nature. It is further a symbol of the philosopher's stone, the ultimate product of the alchemist. Connections between Freemasonry and the Rose Cross exist from times preceding the formation of actual Grand Lodge in 1717. As it is proved by the poem Threnody of Henry Adamson from 1638, we are brethren of the Rosy Crossy. We have the Mason word and second sight. The Rosy Cross is also a symbol found in some Masonic Christian bodies and employed by individuals and groups formed during the last centuries for the study of Rosicrucian and allied subjects, but derives from the adoption of a red rose. Within the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite body of Freemasonry, the 18th degree is specifically concerned with the Rose Cross and confers with the titles of Knight Rose Cross. Of one version of the degree, Albert Pike wrote about in 1871, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn made use of the Rosy Cross as well, including the ritual of the Rose Cross, which is how I came to know what this was, because I did practice that back in the day. Designed for spiritual protection and as preparation for meditation. Based on the Rosicrucian symbol of the red rose and the cross of gold, it is also a key symbol of the Golden Dawn's second order. According to Israel Regardie, the Golden Dawn Rosy Cross contains attributes for the elements, planets, zodiac, Hebrew alphabet, alchemical principles, the hexagram and pentagram, the Sephirot of the Tree of Life, and the formula of INRI, which is the formula that I had mentioned was used in the planetary hexagram ritual. On the back side of the Rosy Cross is inscribed the motto of the Zealiter Ademptus Minor at the bottom, and that is, the Master Jesus Christ, God and Man. That's between four Maltese crosses, and in the center, written in Latin, Blessed be the Lord our God who hath given us the symbol signum. And to continue, Regardie says of the Rosy Cross and the Golden Dawn, the Rose Cross is a lamen or badge synthesizing a vast concourse of ideas, representing in a single emblem the great work itself, the harmonious reconciliation in one symbol of diverse and apparently contradictory concepts, the reconciliation of divinity and manhood. It is a highly important symbol to be worn over the heart during every important operation. It is a glyph, in one sense, of the higher genius to whose knowledge and conversation the student is eternally aspiring. You're supposed to be always inspiring to have kind of like knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel when in ritual magic. So.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That is the whole goal of the magician, is to have knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel. It's supposed to be. Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
In the rituals, it is described as the key of sigils and rituals. And then we have the symbol of the Golden Dawn Rosy Cross. This lamen is a complete synthesis of the masculine, positive, or rainbow scale of color attributions, which is also called the scale of the king. Remember, I've even said that with stuff. You have the king scale, the queen scale. You have 4 different colors, Kabbalistically, that you could have on each Sephiroth. The 4 arms of the cross belong to 4 elements and are colored accordingly. The white portion belongs to the Holy Spirit and the planets. The petals of the rose refer to the 22 paths on the Tree of Life and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. It is the cross in Tifereth, the receptacle and center of forces of the Sephiroth and the paths. The extreme center of the rose is white, the reflected spiritual brightness of Kether, bearing upon it the red rose of 5 petals and the golden cross of 6 squares. 4 green rays issue from around the angles of the cross. Upon the white portion of the lamen below the rose is placed the hexagram with the petals, with the planets. Around the pentagrams, which are placed upon each elemental colored arm, are drawn the symbols of the spirit in 4 elements. Upon each of the arms of the cross are arranged the 3 alchemical principles of sulfur, salt, and mercury. The white rays issuing from behind the rose at the inner angles between the arms of the cross are the rays of the divine light issuing the reflected light of Kether in its center. And in the letters and symbols of them refer to the analysis of the keyword INRI.
Which was at the top of when Jesus was crucified.
Yes. Wow. The rose cross also has a place in the system of Ordo Templi Orientis. It is associated with the 5th degree. And this is reasons why I'm going on and on about this. Is because, I do wonder, like, when you start getting to higher up degrees, will there maybe be, like, could this be part of a cipher? Could you be told that this is, like, used for something? And I did find it interesting that, I'm talking about the 5th degree. You're not getting to the 5th degree in the OTO unless somebody asks you to. That's another thing that I thought was interesting, how it's the 5th degree, the one that you cannot petition higher than the 4th. So, could there be something up with, like, learning a secret?
Yeah.
The members of the 5th degree are responsible for all that concerns the social welfare of the order. This grade is symbolically that of beauty and harmony. It is the natural stopping place of the majority of men and women. For to proceed farther, as will appear, involves renunciation of the sternest kind. Here then is joy, peace, well-being on all planes. The sovereign prince rose cross is attached equally to the higher and the lower, and forms of natural link between them. And then we have, and the reason why I was even bringing this up, a lot of it, is because now you can start, as you can see with these things right here, you will start to be able to make sigils out of the one on the left. And now it will look completely different because it is circular and not square like the other ones that we showed. So you could have these same letters that you were going to draw a sigil with, and now it's going to be completely different looking.
Wow.
Because think about it, technically it's a different cipher.
Yeah, it's a totally different cipher, right? Based on its own.
Yes. That's like even stuff I was getting at with in the first episode, or whichever one it was, with that the sigil, the square that added up to 34 or whatever, it was something, and then 33. Mm-hmm. Those ones having different numerical value are going to create a completely different sigil.
Wow.
Even though it's the same thing. So there's something up with that, I think.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on to the next slide here. The pentagrammaton is an allegorical form of the Hebrew names of Jesus, or it could be Yeshua, constructed from the original form of Jesus to be Yeshua, a Hebrew Bible form of Joshua. Originally found in the works of Anastasius Kircher and Johann Baptiste Groschedel, if I'm pronouncing that right, 1619. The essential idea of the pentagrammaton is of an alphabetic framework. They're going to try to pronounce this whole thing. But it's YH, then the SH, WH, which can be supplied with vowels in various ways. And the W can also be used with a U or a V. Since the Hebrew letter writes either a W or a constant sound, you can start changing the V or the U. I'm not going to try to explain all that. But I did want to show how that is up there as well. Okay. And then we have some more Golden Dawn. The Cipher manuscripts of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The Cipher manuscripts are a collection of 60 folios containing the structural outline of a series of magical initiation rituals corresponding to the spiritual elements of earth, air, water, and fire. The occult materials in the manuscripts are a compendium of the classical magical theory and symbolism known in the Western world up until the middle of the 19th century. combined to create an encompassing model of the Western mystery tradition and arranged into a syllabus of graded course of instruction in magical symbolism. It was used as the structure for the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The folios are drawn in black ink on cotton paper, watermarked 1809. So, supposedly. The text is plain English written from right to left in a simple substitution cryptogram. Numerals are substituted by Hebrew letters. Aleph equals 1, Bet equals 2, so on. Crude, there's drawings of diagrams, magical implements, and tarot cards are added into the text. And one final page transcribes into French and Latin. The ciphers contain the outlines of a series of graded rituals in the syllabus for a course of instruction in Kabbalah and Hermetic magic, including astrology, occult tarot, geomancy, and alchemy. It also contains several manuscripts of the cipher manuscripts of the original source upon which the rituals and the knowledge lectures of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn were based. So, supposedly, this thing is supposed to have a lot of the secrets that is, within the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Encrypted.
Yeah. The basic structure of the rituals and the names of the grades are similar to those of the Rosicrucian orders, Societas Rosicrucian in Anglia, and the German Order the German Order der Gold, whatever. So I'm not even trying to pronounce that either. But and then we'll move on to this one. And here, in case people are looking or listening, if you're listening to the podcast when this drops, again, if you want, I highly suggest to check out the video. So I have some more slides up again, and you can see some of the stuff I got from this folio, if it's correct or not. But this is what's out there to get. In 1887, William Westcott reportedly purchased the cipher manuscript from a bookstall on Farringdon Road in London. The manuscript folios were coded based on Trithemius' Stenographia, his book. And Trithemius was the guy that we covered in part 2. Between the pages of the manuscript, Westcott reportedly found a sheet of paper with the name and address of a certain Frulian Sprengel, if I'm saying that correctly, an alleged Rosicrucian adept living in Germany. Westcott supposedly deciphered the manuscript, and the ensuing rituals were written by MacGregor Mathers. Westcott then purportedly corresponded with Sprengel, who allegedly authorized him to found an English branch of the German occult society Zur Golden Morgenroth. That's how you say it, right? Westcott, Mathers, and W.R. Woodman founded the Isis Urania Temple, number 3 of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in 1888. Those crazy eights. So this kind of becomes the official story of the founding of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The truth, however, is somewhat different. In reality, when Westcott obtained the cipher manuscripts from the widow of the famous Rosicrucian and Freemasonic researcher Kenneth Mackenzie, following his death in 1886, Westcott then deliberately attempted to obscure the true source with the Frulian Sprengel story. Well, that's like another theory. And now we get to was one of my favorite people to cover in the last episode. We're back to Johannes Trithemius. And that will be Polygraphia from 1518. That's old as shit. Yeah, okay. Polygraphia is a cryptographic work written by Johannes Trithemius, published in 1518, dedicated to the art of steganography. The full title is, oh my god, this is funny. Polygraphae Libri Sex Oannis Trithemii Abitis Piopolitani Quandum Spanahymenis Ed Maximilianum Caesarum. I don't know. That's
It's a lot of big words.
Yeah, what the? Yo, would you even want to write a title that long?
I don't understand it either.
I try to make the episodes short and sweet. Like
I know.
Oh man.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It is the oldest known source of the popular witches alphabet. Used at large by the modern traditions of witchcraft. So that's another reason why I'm covering this as well, is because like this is even something that influenced I think like kind of today's Wicca in a sense, or witchcraft. So, you know, this goes back a little bit farther than some people might think, and it's still kind of predominant in its own way today.
Yeah.
I'll switch the slide here. This is just, you know, you can see some of the what was going on in this book. It is composed of 6 books and a clavis, which is a key. Book 1 contains no fewer than 384 alphabets of 24 letters or degrees. Each letter corresponds to a Latin word, noun, verb, adjective, etc., in reference to Christian prayers and religious texts, being in total 9,216 different words. This is nowadays known as the Ave Maria cipher, which mostly uses only a few of the first alphabets. Book 2 contains 308 more Latin alphabets with 7,392 words, again using Latin words with mostly religious context. Book 3 represents 132 alphabets in 3 columns, which are 3,168 dictions of a universal language, where each letter is equivalent to an invented word. So there's a lot going on with these things.
Yeah. Well, the fact that they invent words and vocabulary is just, yeah, it's fascinating.
Takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Book 4 shows 2,880 invented alphabet dictions and 120 alphabets. To decode, one must simply extract the second letter of each word. Book 4 reproduces 2 conical hash tables, one direct with 80 alphabets and the other inverted with 98 alphabets, allowing infinite permutations, to which 12 planispheric wheels, each comprising 6 categories of 24 numbers, combined with the 24 letters, and thus allowing an elaborate and big amount of ciphered messages. I mean, that probably didn't even make sense to most people. So, yeah, sorry, Dawn, I don't know what that was, but I was totally fine on my side. So, maybe it was, yeah. The work ends with the alphabets of his invention as the Tetragrammaticus, formed by 4 characters that are diversified in 24 letters, and the Enigrammaticus of 9 characters and 28 letters. And then here we have the Theban alphabet, which I find this very interesting. The Theban alphabet, also known as the witch's alphabet, is a writing system, specifically a substitution cipher of the Latin script, that was used by early modern occultists and is popular in the Wicca movement. It is also known as the Honorian alphabet, or the runes of Honorius, or the witch's alphabet, due to its use in modern Wicca and other forms of witchcraft as one of the many substitution ciphers to hide magical writings, such as the context of a book of shadows from other people. The Theban alphabet has not been found in any publications prior to that of Trithemius. So as of right now, basically, you know, if this is used by people who practice Wicca, they may not even know that this goes all the way back to 1518. They probably think that fucking what's-his-face came up with this shit when he's Gardner. No idea. Zero clue. Probably have no idea that Gardner was also a student of Crowley. So basically, you got Thelema Light with Wicca. Hate to tell you.
Right. I love that Thelema Light. That's awesome.
Yeah. There is one to correspond differences between. Oh, let me see. Do I got to switch the slide here? Yeah. There is one-to-one correspondence between Theban and the letters in the old Latin alphabet. The modern characters J and U are not represented. They are often transliterated using the Theban characters for I and V. In the original chart by Trithemius, the letter W comes after Z, as it was a recent addition to the Latin alphabet and did not yet have a standard position. This caused it to be misinterpreted as an ampersand or end of sentence mark. Kind of like something that I will be getting into. There's like a Dancing Man thing, and like to show that the end of a word or something, they use like a flag where the person will be holding a flag. That's the way to show you that there's like a stop.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so I'm assuming they're probably saying something like the Z might have been screwing that up. Yeah, sorry, I lost where I was.
And the sentence mark.
Yeah, some users of those later charts transliterate W using the Theban characters for VV. That is even another thing I don't know if people know. Back in the day with typewriters, sometimes they did not actually have all those U, V, and W. You just used one. Sometimes it was a V.
Yeah.
You used two of them to make a W, or you used the V and for a U and just hope the people understood, which I think it was like almost kind of understood.
Wasn't the Roman alphabet like they used the V instead of a U or a U
Something
instead
like
of a
that.
V or something like that? Yeah, interchangeably.
Eric S. Raymond, an American software developer and author, has created a draft proposal for adding the Theban alphabet to the Universal Coded Character Set, or Unicode. So, found that a little interesting. Then we have here something I brought up in last episode. Now we're going to get into it a little bit more, is the Bembo tablet. The Bembo tablet, or Bembo table of Isis, is an elaborate table of bronze with enamel and silver inlay, most probably of Roman origin, but imitating the ancient Egyptian style. It was named in the Renaissance after Cardinal Bembo, a celebrated antiquarian, who acquired it after the 1527 sack of Rome. Therefore, it was used to penetrate the meaning of Egyptian hieroglyphs, which were not authentically deciphered until the 19th century. I'm like, are they authentically deciphered now?
Yeah.
Come on. You know, or are they? And we're just being told some like bullshit story. Yeah, we got the comic book version of what the hieroglyphs are.
Yeah.
We got the Marvel version. Owing to these prior misconceptions, the tablet became of importance to Western esoteric traditions. The tablet is now regarded as of Roman rather than Egyptian origin, like I was just saying before, dating to sometime in the 1st century. Little is known about its subsequent history until the sack of Rome in 1527, like I was mentioning before. After his death in 1547, the tablet was acquired by Gonzaga rulers of Mantua, remaining in their museum until the capture of the city in 1630 by Ferdinand II's troops. It then passed through various hands until the French conquest of Italy in 1797. Alexander Lenore mentioned in 1809 that it was on exhibition in the Bibliothèque Nationale. After Napoleon's downfall, it was returned to Italy to become a central exhibit where it has remained. The tablet was made of bronze with enamel and silver inlay, and the fingers cut very shallow, and the contours of most of them delineated with thin silver wire. The bases of which the figures sat were covered with silver, later torn away, and these sections are left blank. You know, I know sometimes, like, I guess, like, depending on the situation or, like, what the person's doing, like, I can see it being silly or, like, making fun of, like, somebody using wire. Mm-hmm. But when you have to start getting down to the whole idea, if there's electricity and energy being used, and if you start, like, actually really, like, designing it into things, I do wonder, like, is there actually something to that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And, like, we just, like, ignorant and laugh at it and think it's silly.
And
you know, like, I don't think Crowley put copper down his fucking wand for no reason.
No, exactly.
You know? I think it just maybe depends on the situation if it's actually making sense. But I do wonder about that. I mean, even like certain tablets are supposed to be made out of certain stones. Does that have to do with?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thought. I think certain tablets, weren't they written on metal as well, some of them? Or no?
I'm not sure. I can't remember what it was, but I did have I had a few friends that were very much into like Solomonic magic and stuff, or like kind of like Christian magic. And there was a certain type of tablet that they would like, you know, if you were a gangster, you went out and spent ridiculous money on the right fucking stone. You know what I'm saying? I can't remember what it is right now, but it, it's supposed to be in a certain size. There's actually, supposed to be made in a certain way. Is that for reasons,
Right.
Yeah, the bases on which the figures sat were covered with silver, later torn away. These sections are left blank. It is an important example of ancient metallurgy. Its surface being decorated with a variety of metals, including silver, gold, copper, gold alloy, and various base metals. One of the metals employed is black, made by alloying copper and tin with small amounts of gold and silver, and then pickling it in an organic acid. So, I mean, there was a lot of work done here. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
This black...
to have recipes for this.
This black metal is possibly a variety of Corinthian bronze, described by Pliny and Plutarch. It's funny that you even mentioned a recipe, because I think I might have taken it out of here. But there was, I think, one cipher that I might cover that was eventually found. They found something that they knew could have been deciphered with one of these ciphers that I'm covering. Mm-hmm. And eventually, when they went and deciphered this thing that they thought, I guess, was like almost like a treasure map in a sense, they were like, oh, it ended up turning out to be a recipe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think I might have even have told you that. And the way you just said that now, and I had said to you, I was like, but if I would have gotten a recipe out of the cipher, I wouldn't have stopped there. I would have thought, okay, this is something else now.
Right. No,
you know what I'm saying? And like, how do you know? Like, maybe they do put recipes of what they're doing out there in a cipher.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Damn.
Yeah. Although the scenes are Egyptianizing, they do not depict Egyptian rites. Figures are shown with non-customary attributes, making it unclear which are divinities and which kings or queens. Egyptian motifs are used without rhyme or reason. However, the central figure is recognizable as Isis, suggesting that the tablet originated in some Roman center of her worship. Here are some of other ones that I'm showing you on the screen if people want to check it out. One of the earliest scholars to study the tablet was Piero Valeriano Bolzani, who may have seen it before it became generally known after the sack of 1527. His Hieroglyphica Sive de Sacris Egyptorium Litteris Commentarii seems to have been composed earlier than that, although it was published much later. His book was the source for the English physician and philosopher Sir Thomas Browne, who in his discourse, The Garden of Cyrus from 1648, alludes to the figure of Isis and Osiris, and the tutelary spirits in the Bembine table. 17th century scholars of comparative religion, such as Kircher and Brown, attempted to reconcile the wisdom of antiquity with Christianity. The Bembine tablet was interpreted as such a way to do it. So they were even trying to, in my opinion, tie, I guess, occultism maybe, or occult knowledge to Christianity, and this was kind of a way to do that in a sense.
I think so.
Yeah. Kircher's speculations were used by several occultists, including Eliphas Levi, William Westcott, and Manly P. Hall, as a key to interpreting the Book of Thoth, or Tarot. Platonistic writer Thomas Taylor even claimed that this tablet formed the altar before which Plato stood as he received initiation with a subterranean hole in the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Wow. Interesting.
So, yeah, there was just an interesting tablet with some interesting history behind it that's old as hell.
That's amazing.
You know, it's like a cipher.
Yeah.
This is a fun one here. The pigpen cipher. The pigpen cipher, alternately, or you could call it the Masonic cipher, the Freemason cipher, the Rosicrucian cipher, Napoleon cipher, and the tic-tac-toe cipher. The cipher is geometric simple substitution cipher, which exchanges letters for symbols, which are fragments of a grid. The example key shows one way the letters can be assigned to the grid. The cipher is believed to be an ancient cipher and is said to have originated with the Hebrew rabbis. Thompson writes that there is evidence that suggests the Knights Templar utilized a pigpen cipher during the Christian Crusades. In 1531, Cornelius Agrippa, who we talked a lot about in the last episode, described an early form of the Rosicrucian cipher, which he attributes to an existing Jewish Kabbalistic tradition. This system, called the Kabbalah of the Nine Chambers, which then, in 1933, we got the 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang. No, but I'll stop playing around. This system, called the Kabbalah of the Nine Chambers, by later authors, used the Hebrew alphabet rather than the Latin alphabet, and was used for religious symbolism rather than for any apparent cryptological purpose. Variations of this cipher were used by the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons, though the Masons used the pigpen cipher so often that the system is frequently called the Freemason cipher. Hyson claims it was invented by Freemasons. They began using it in the early 18th century to keep their records of history and rites private and for correspondence between lodge leaders. Tombstones of Freemasons can also be found which use the system as part of the engravings. One of the earliest stones in the Trinity Church Cemetery in New York City, of course, it has to be New York, which opened in 1697, contains a cipher of this type which deciphers to remember death. That's what they cipher, remember death. George Washington's army had documentation about the system with a much more randomized form of the alphabet. During the American Civil War, the system was used by Union prisoners in Confederate prisons.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting right there. And, you know, I even found interesting on that, I understand it's like a remake. I got to look into it, but it's like, well, why does that thing have the SS on it?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Why does our army over here back then have SS on them? That's very interesting.
That's very peculiar.
A little fun fact. Throw this in there. Diana Dors, English actress and blonde bombshell, Diana Dors was once considered a rival to Marilyn Monroe. When she passed away at the age of 52, she left behind an encoded message which only her husband had the key to. The message, it was said to lead to millions of pounds, which the actress had hidden. Unfortunately, Dors' husband died just a few months after her. Her son then faced the task of decrypting the message without the key. He noticed that the first part was in a version of pigpen cipher and was able to code that to read locations and names. Underneath that was a message encoded using a different cipher. Eventually, Dors' son got help from British cryptologist Andrew Clark, who determined it was encoded in the Vigenère, or however you say that, cipher. When decoded, it was a list of names and locations. However, what the list meant has never been determined, and the money has not been recovered.
Oh my God, can you imagine? It's probably like...
Well, listen, I'm going to be totally honest with you. If I came into a fuck ton of money, I ain't telling anybody either, because everybody's going to have their hand out.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, you only know me now because I found free money.
Yeah.
Come on. I'm sure people are the same way they were back then. She's like, I'm just keeping my mouth shut with this kid.
Yeah. But sorry, I can't pay my electric bill. My mom hid the money, and I can't figure out where she put it.
Yeah. Oh, so... Now we'll go into the one that we just mentioned. Oh, here's another fun fact here thing, which for decades, the U.S. and Germany owned a Swiss crypto company used by 120 countries. unfettered access to encrypted messages from Iran, Libya, and others, Crypto AG, a Swiss cryptographic communications gear company that got its big break building code-making gear for the U.S. Army in World War II, has been a provider of encryption systems for more than 120 countries. And according to a report by the Washington Post and German broadcaster ZDF, the company was owned outright for decades by the Central Intelligence Agency and German's intelligence agency, the BND, allowing the CIA, the National Security, and German intelligence to read the most sensitive communications from everyone but the Soviets and Chinese, basically, supposedly.
Wow.
That that ridiculous amount of level of access allowed to the United States to monitor Iranian communications during the Iranian hostage crisis. They had the Argentine communications during the Falklands War. They had the communications of the Egyptian president Anwar Sadat during negotiations of an Egypt-Israel peace deal at Camp David. I mean, they have had tons of things that they knew about.
Yeah.
In CIA documents, Crypto AG was referred to by the code name Minerva. Come on.
Yeah.
The U.S. government began its relationship with Crypto AG's founder, Boris Hagelin, who fled from Norway to the U.S. during World War II in the late 1950s. The U.S. persuaded him to limit the strength of cryptographic gear sold to other countries in exchange for a licensing agreement that would compensate the company for lost sales. As the company moved to electronic encryption, U.S. intelligence began to have an even greater role, with the NSA essentially designing the entirety of the company's first all-electronic encryption system released in 1967. So, like, the NSA designed it for it. What the?
And don't show anybody else. Or give them the watered-down version, not the full version.
Even as Crypto AG provided a wealth of intelligence, by 1980 it provided about 40% of NSA's take from other countries. Countries' diplomatic cables and other encrypted communications. It also generated millions in revenue that the CIA and BND split and plowed into other operations.
Of course.
Yeah. So, and then we'll move on to this cipher here. I just thought that was some interesting, fun fact stuff there.
Yeah.
How our government is even into the whole ciphers thing, which a lot of the ciphers have come from occultists.
Yes.
So it's like, we're getting an influence from occultism with letters and numbers. So maybe we're not crazy when we think there's something there with letters and numbers and numerical value. Just saying, maybe.
Exactly.
I don't even know how you say this. How would you pronounce this, if you don't mind?
Vigenère.
Yeah, right.
Vigenère. Yeah. It's
trying to think of how I would say that with like a French accent or some shit. Yeah, this cipher is a method of encrypting alphabetic text, where each letter of the plain text is encoded with a different Caesar cipher, whose increment is determined by the corresponding letter of another text or the key. The cipher is therefore a special case for polyalphabetic substitution. First described by Giovan Battista Malasso in 1553, the cipher is easy to understand and implement, but it resisted all attempts to break it until 1863, 3 centuries later. This earned its description in French for the indecipherable cipher. Many people have tried to implement encryption schemes that are essentially kind of like this. In 1863, Friedrich Kaczynski was the first to publish a general method of deciphering Vigenère ciphers. In the 19th century, the scheme was misattributed to Blaise de Vigenère from 1523 to 1596. So that's kind of a way it has its name now. The very first well-documented description of the polyalphabetic cipher was by Leon Battista Alberti around 1467. and used a metal cipher disk to switch between cipher alphabets. Alberti's system only switched alphabets after several words, and switches were indicated by writing the letter of the corresponding alphabet in the cipher text. Later, Johannes Trithemius, in his work Polygraphia, which I mentioned before, from 1518, invented the tabula recta, a critical component of this cipher now. The Trithemius cipher, however, provided a progressive, rather rigid and predictable system for switching between cipher alphabets. In 1586, Blaise de Vigenère published a type of polyalphabetic cipher called an autokey cipher, because its key is based on the original plain text before the court of Henry III of France. The cipher, now known as the Vigenère cipher, however, is originally described again by Battista Balauso. He built upon the tabula rectus by adding a repeating countersign that he got from Trithemius to switch cipher alphabets every letter. So that was like a way to even make it more complex
make it more difficulty, yeah.
Yeah, the Vigenère cipher is simple enough to be a field cipher if it is used in conjunction with cipher skills. The Confederate States of America, for example, used a brass cipher disk to implement Vigenère cipher during the American Civil War. The Confederacy's message were far from secret, and the Union regularly cracked its messages. Throughout the war, the Confederate leadership primarily relied upon three key phrases: Manchester Bluff, complete victory, and as the war came to a close, come retribution. A Vigenère cipher was completely random and non-reusable. Key, which as long as the message becomes a one-time pad, theoretically an unbreakable cipher. If you think about it, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like how we do that with like emails now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
that's true.
For encryption on emails.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that one was rather interesting. I covered that
and
one.
I think that's kind of like how the algorithms work, right? With some of these security stuff on the computers and stuff like that, is they're using these ciphers and they've just like supersized them on grander scale.
Yeah, they just kind of like boost them up or make them a little bit like more complicated, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got like, I consider this kind of like another interesting fun fact. This is the Dancing Men cipher. Was invented by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and appeared in his story, The Adventure of the Dancing Men. In this story, Sherlock Holmes discovered that the dancing figures is a secret cipher and cracks the code. The story doesn't cover all the letters, but the alphabet was completed by H. Rick Sorensen, who also added numerals. The Dancing Men cipher originated from the Sherlock Holmes story, The Adventure of the Dancing Men. In the story, Sherlock Holmes examines the occurrences of the dancing figures and realizes that it is a substitution cipher. He then cracks the code by frequency analysis. So, that was just weird how, like, you know, because this is a thing that I have said before in the past, and I do think there might be a good case for it. I do wonder about, like, dancing and performances.
Oh, wow.
You know, stuff like this, or even like I've said before, I could easily see trying to put your body into forms of Hebrew. I mean, even in English. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, Hebrew, I just feel like is so much more artistic. You could really be, like, putting yourself all over the place and nobody would really notice.
And if you combine it with song, the song could be the text, and the dancing could be like the Dancing Men code of how you unbreak the lyrics to the song.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of...
I mean, you always got rappers talking about my ciphers.
That's true. That is true.
Get my cipher. Got to break it down in ciphers. Mathematics in ciphers.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then I think I'm finally done and I'll shut up 48 minutes later. The Ave Maria cipher. I didn't get into this too much. It is very interesting, and I think like this one's probably very drawn out. Ave Maria is a steganographic process invented by the Benedictine monk Johannes Trithemius around 1518. It replaces each letter of the plain text by a group of words which looks like a poem. Encryption uses a correlation table between letters and portions of psalms. Trithemius wrote a book, Polygraphia, which I had mentioned or forgot the year already, which contains 100 pages with Latin words associated with a letter of the alphabet. The Latin alphabet does not have all the letters. There is no V or W, and is replaced by U, and there is no J, which is replaced by I, and so on. Encryption consists in encoding each letter of the message with a word in the list. The result will resemble a prayer or litany in Latin. The cipher is composed of Latin words generally related to God. Ave Maria, which translates to Hail Mary in Latin, is one of the most popular prayers in the Catholic tradition. The encrypted message is much longer than the plain text since it is replaced by letters and words. The classic Ave Maria usually ends with the word Amen. That's something to keep in mind, too.
That is. Because you see amen throughout a lot of biblical texts.
Mm-hmm. Or you could toss that out there a lot, and nobody would even know that that was a closing for a cipher.
Yeah.
Just saying it. Just putting that out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes, and that is the end of my mouth. So,
Thank you. That was.
I don't know how
really
you didn't fall
interesting.
asleep.
No, I was. Again, I find all this super interesting, like with the original languages and how they originated and where they go and how they migrate. And now we have people putting numbers to them and then making ciphers. I find it super, super interesting. So I'm going to briefly cover a cipher that is talked about by quite a few people regarding Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law. I'm a novice, so it's, please.
And you know what? I'll be
wrong.
totally honest with you. The reason why I didn't get into this too much is because this is fairly new,
Okay.
and there isn't just for the listeners, why. Because I had said the same thing to you. It's fairly new. There isn't a lot of history about it, and honestly,
Right.
I wasn't trying to figure it out myself just to present it on the show.
Right.
I figured if I bring up something with Crowley in the OTO, I'm supposed to be on point. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can just direct them to me because I'll just tell them that I did a quick study. So there's an excerpt in the Book of the Law, and I mainly gravitated towards 275, which says, "I listen to the numbers and the words," and to me, it seems like a direct interpretation that the texts should be interpreted by using numbers and words, like we talked about in the first and second episode with Gematria or alphabetic numeric systems. And
I mean, this even goes along with, something I said before, sorry to interrupt you.
No,
with the Book
go
of the
ahead,
Law,
please.
there does have this cipher basically in here. I know I'm jumping ahead. But then even in the Book of Lies, in the commentary, I know the commentary is written by somebody else besides Crowley. But they're constantly mentioning either gematria or ciphers possibly being involved. The reason that the chapter number is it going along with the chapter, a lot of things.
Right. No, absolutely. And
so you have to wonder how much is encoded message.
Latent. Absolutely. I mean, if it's in there and it's telling you it is, and then the next line, the next verse 76. It looks like a long string of numbers, and I looked it up, and it kind of gives it away at the end, and it's the R.P. Stovall cipher, right? So already it's alluding to a cipher. And so you have 75 saying numbers and words, and then the next verse, conveying a cipher. And then what the other thing, and I read this a couple of times in some of the blogs that were writing on it, the second sentence of the verse 76 is, "Thou knowest not, nor shall thou know ever." And it almost makes me feel like, so ayahuasca, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if I get any of the verbiage wrong, basically dictated to Crowley the Book of the Law.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and Rose wrote
and
it
so
down.
And so if he's saying "thou knowest not, nor thou shall ever know," and he just finished talking about a cipher, and numbers and words, to me it's like, so Crowley's not going to be the one to fully decipher or uncipher what was being dictated to him, that it would be someone else who would, I guess, build upon that.
See, this is
right?
the whole thing, though, with me, and this is why I think it might be important, again, with Ciphers, is that I'm not sure if I actually buy that story at face value. Okay. His story of how the Book of the Law might have could have been a decrypted, it could have been an occulted story in itself.
Gotcha.
So then it's like, you have to decipher this whole thing. Like, he already wrote it in code.
Already, to find out that he was the one that wrote it in code.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that excerpt kind of sets it up to that what the next, in the equinox, now you're looking at different ciphers, how the alphabet is positioned in certain ways and how that can be utilized to potentially decipher some of the texts. One of the ones that I found pretty interesting was this grid paper. It's like a famous grid page of Liber Al's, which is like a grid superimposed on page 16, and it basically has the verse, the verses or whatever's written with a long diagonal line going across and then a circled cross. So in the Book of the Law, it states that the book should only be reproduced or printed to include Crowley's handwritten version, as per suggestion that there are mysteries, and I quote, "There are mysteries in the chance shape of the letters and their positions to one another. Whichever top left or bottom right diagonal is read, the magical order of the letters is obtained." So he's telling you this is written in some sort of ciphered message, right? It's kind of how I gathered it. And then so like on the right, you see how letters were laid over the grid and then numbers going and corresponding, right, to the actual grid that was handwritten upon. With this page in mind, the ALW cipher, or the New Aeon English Kabbalah, was developed by James Lees on November 26 of 1976 to serve as a tool for interpreting the works of Crowley. It appears that it works like an Affine cipher, which is a little bit similar to Atbash cipher, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But it basically, the slight variance is that it's made up of an arithmetic system assigning the letters of the English alphabet to assign numerical values, kind of like with the Atbash. But with this one, the cipher is based on the magical number 11 by taking every 11th letter in the alphabet as the order and then assigning them in sequential values. So 11 is pretty much the goalpost or the guidepost. The method of order and value, where letters are arranged on a grid, is credited to James Lees as well. Jake Stratton Kent, also in addition, noticed that the passage appeared separated on purpose with an X, seen as the first letter or character on the second line, potentially indicating the multiplication symbol. By multiplying the number of words on the second 11, you get a total of 187. 187 is also the numerical value of English alphabet when applied to the ALW cipher. Stratton Kent went on to clarify that the English Kabbalah is not a system of numerology, but a Kabbalah. So
that even that circle on that X or that plus thing, it's like we saw that in prior episodes as part of symbolism and alphabets. Mm-hmm. You know what I have?
Some of the earliest ones too. Yeah.
I even joked around before saying something about the Zodiac killer with that, and
because he uses it, doesn't he?
Yes, and you know what? I really wish I would have gotten a picture of it. There was something I was watching the news. They're showing all this shit that's going on over there, what supposedly is going on over there. I'm not denying that something isn't, but I just wonder how much is, whatever. And I had also started to notice, I've noticed 2 or 3 times, I think 3 times at least now, seeing that X in a circle in the background of things. Wow. And, I don't know if maybe that's like something that they were using, but again, I was seeing that same guy. I don't know if you saw it when I made a joke about the Yeah, news getting the daytime soap operas getting so violent because I was watching the news and the guy's jumping on the fucking floor because supposedly the bombs and stuff. That same dude in some sort of like wild thing was going on, and that symbol was on a car there was like some sort of service car or something over there, and it was numbered 93. It had 93 written on it with that symbol spray painted on it.
How do you
Behind
know
him.
that's not a key to the cipher for what you're seeing on the news?
I just thought
Like,
it was weird. I was like,
that
I've
is
seen that
weird.
symbol a few times because of covering
is super
ciphers, and
weird.
now I see 93. And it's on a guy who I was questioning the authenticity of the video I was watching a few days ago. It's very weird.
Yeah, no, that is super weird. Oof. Interesting. On also on this, so you see a grid as well on Cipher 6. So if you remember going back to the grid page of page 16, Cipher 6 is a secret cipher that has been passed down throughout the ages by various secret societies, similar to other ciphers. Numerical values are assigned to each letter of the English alphabet involving simple addition. So it kind of looks like, for instance, the grid paper, how he drew that line almost to indicate, that it could be the cipher 6 that he's following. This is speculative, of course, that he's following the cipher 6 itself by, using that method. And then also the star 6 or cycle 11 is what we saw with the equinox. The solution to several of these ciphers have been kind of discovered in 1974, and they've like totally launched a whole new development and of computer analysis field and all that other study and all that other stuff. One thing that I found interesting is like when they mention 1974 as being the discovery of ciphers through computer analysis, didn't he die in 1947?
I don't know.
Crowley, I think he did. So
Oh,
I thought
yeah,
the
yeah. Oh,
47,
yeah.
74 being flipped around. I was like, that's pretty interesting. Because this is when that whole
you might
thing
be
kind of
right.
kicked off.
Because if I remember correctly, he was like pretty much right after World War II.
Yeah. I don't know why that stuck out because I think
supposed
because
to
in
know
looking
this
at these ciphers, I'm seeing a lot of 74, or a lot of flipping of numbers. So now my eyes, looking for that. But, so yeah, I thought that was just something, a fun fact to mention.
Yeah.
If it's real.
47.
47.
December 1st, 1947.
Yeah.
74.
So another set
Well, and the
of
4 and 7 is also only on the right pillar again. There was something we brought up
Oh.
with that one other time. Right? I don't.
Right? Like, I feel like 47 is something that we've talked about or touched upon. I don't know if it was with Gilgo or with something else.
Might have been Richard Speck recently. Yeah. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, no telling. So when we were doing a lot of the Gematria uses the 4-base ciphers, and so I wanted to talk about them really quickly, kind of just to do like the long math of how some of these ciphers are used. The following 4 ciphers are the fundamental ciphers that is used in Gematria. The first one is the most basic cipher in Gematria. So we are assigning A to 1, B to 2, C to 3, and then so on, Z to 26. And it's practiced in any language, and it's called the ordinal cipher or English ordinal cipher. Like this one uses 26 letters of the English alphabet. So the second one is the English reduction, and when using the rules of numerology, as in the case of full reduction cipher or Pythagorean order or English reduction, those are all the names assigned to English reduction. The numbers having 2 digits are reduced to a single digit by adding them together. So like in the case of you go A is assigned to 1 and so on, but when you get to I, you see that it's assigned to 9, and when you jump to J, it goes back to a 1. So as soon as 9 comes, the next number is going to go back to 1 to basically reduce it down to a single number. And this concept was basically brought into play according to Pythagoras, who is the father of math, that there are only 9 true numbers. And so therefore the English reduction applies to that. And the number 9 seems to pop up a lot in ciphers, like in terms of also a guidepost or goalpost.
Maybe that's why the 19, we've been like being like, what's up with that? That would be compass soul, I guess.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, so like J is equal to 1 and so forth. So the reverse ordinal cipher is the opposite of the English ordinal. So it's called the reverse ordinal cipher or reverse alphabetical order. And so basically it flips everything. A is now 26 and Z is now 1. So it just basically flips the assignment of the numbers. Pretty simple there. On the last one, the reverse reduction, it's also called the reverse full reduction cipher or the reverse Pythagorean order, is basically the reverse of the English reduction. And so now instead of 1 being assigned to A, you now have 8 being assigned to A, which I don't know why they didn't start with 9, but I guess because they started with 1 on Z, right, and then worked their way backwards. And then obviously when you get to Q, it goes back to 1, so reducing it to a single digit. One thing that I thought was really interesting, if you were to run God, G-O-D, through the English ordinal cipher, so if you look at it, G equals 7, O equals 15, D equals 4, you get 26. And 26 is the same number of the letter in the English alphabet. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of something.
That's interesting, right?
I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the next one is the Atbash cipher. The Atbash cipher was originally used for the Hebrew alphabet as a monoalphabetic substitution cipher. I think most of these ciphers use the substitution as their base. It seems like that's kind of their go-to. They claim that it was used for thousands of years, and it's most commonly found in Kabbalistic writings and Jewish mysticism. It's sometimes referred to as the mirror code. It is one of the earliest and oldest known ciphers to have been used, dating back to 500 BC, potentially predating Egyptian encryption. Possibly because of how simple it is to use, and it doesn't require a key. You can use it with any alphabet, which is like you can use it with abjad or syllabary. No, that's not how you say it, but alphabet that uses syllables. Hebrew, Latin, Greek, and so forth. But because of this, it can easily be deciphered, offering very little security. However, Atbash ciphers are rare and difficult to find, I think because they easily can fit into text or a sentence, and compared to others. A quick way to spot an Atbash code is when the first letter of the alphabet is switched with the last letter of the alphabet. It's used by Kabbalists who study the hidden meaning of words, and they will use, which I found interesting, they will use the Atbash cipher to dilute the meaning and or power of words as opposed to using the actual word. So by encrypting the word, it'll change the numerical value of the word and then therefore reducing the power or the impact of power that the word has. Kind of like, toning it down a notch. But I also read something that if they were to reverse it, that it serves to reverse the power of the word. So, first evidence of encryption was found in Egypt, and because of this, most people believe that ancient Egypt is the origin of this code. However, Atbash was actually the first cipher with origins in Israel and originally encrypted in Hebrew. And I provided a little bit of examples to kind of give you what that looks like. In the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, they contain occurrences of the Atbash cipher. The name Atbash refers to the first letters of the names of the Hebrew characters, Aleph, Ta, Bet, and Shin. Examples of the Atbash code are found in the book of Jeremiah. So Jeremiah 25:26, the king of Shishrak shall drink after them. So if you convert that to Hebrew, put it through the Atbash code, it'll spit out BBL or Babel, which is Babylon. So it would be the king of Babylon shall drink after them. Another example would be Jeremiah 51:1. Behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against the inhabitant of Leb Kamani a destroying wind. Again, if you put it through the Atbash cipher, it spits out Chaldea or Babylonians. So that was a couple examples that were provided.
So is like the acronym BBL maybe just an Atbash cipher?
It could be.
Brazilian butt lift.
This whole time we thought it was. It's
still get mind fucked with magic somehow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
In the previous episode, we talked about how words were powerful and they possessed magical and theurgic qualities, and that the spoken word was capable of changing reality. So if words, going back to what I just said a little while ago, so if words possess power and essence, Atbash could represent a reversal of that power and essence. So that was that example. Last example, which I found pretty interesting, the Atbash cipher theory relates also to the Baphomet mythos, with its origins dating back to 500 BC and scribes writing the book of Jeremiah using what we now call to be the Atbash cipher. It refers to when they were working on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they used the cipher to translate words that were undetectable. The same scientists that used it on the Dead Sea Scrolls used it on texts by the Knights Templar, particularly the etymology of Baphomet. And when they decided that they would use the Atbash cipher on the word Baphomet, they discovered that in reverse, it gives you Sophia. So I wonder if that's where the whole Baphomet Sophia comes into play. And then, of course, if you put Atbash through the Greek, so although written in Hebrew, resulted in the Greek word Sophia, meaning wisdom in English. So if you do it in English, it'll give you wisdom. So I thought that was another one. Yeah. Interesting.
Wisdom does go with Copiale too.
Ah, yes. And wasn't there a book in the Bible called Book of Wisdom?
There could have been. I know one of the spheres stands for wisdom, I'm pretty sure.
So the Copiale, another cipher is the Copiale cipher. I think I'm saying that right. It's an encrypted manuscript made up of 75,000 characters, strangely handwritten in Roman and Greek letters with abstract symbols conveying a message within its 105 pages. For more than 260 years, the mysterious cipher, bound in gold and green brocade paper, remained undeciphered. Then in the 1970s, scientists from the German Academy of Sciences dated the cipher to exist in 1700s, 1760 to 1780. However, in April of 2011, decipherment revealed its creation in the 1730s. And if you go back and forth, there's discrepancies between those time periods. So it's the 1700s. That's pretty much how I kind of put it in my head. The reason that they push for the 1730 angle is because there was a secret society that called themselves the High Enlightened Oculist Order, or the Oculist, who used sight as a metaphor for knowledge. Its name comes from one of the two non-coded inscriptions inside the manuscript, Copiale 3, and inside the paper it is said to be of high quality, containing 2 different watermarks. So they had to track down this book because after the Cold War, it kind of went, it was going back and forth between private collections, and then after the Cold War, basically it turned up and it was discovered in East Berlin Academy in Germany. And many attempts were made to crack it, and they were unsuccessful. So it was forgotten about, kept in private collections, and so forth. Then in 2011, they tracked down the manuscript, the original one, and scientists in Sweden with a scientist in California were able to basically get a crack at it, and then kind of unraveled from there. So not even knowing the language of the encrypted document, they basically thought that it would be either German or Greek or Roman, because the characters were Roman and Greek characters distributed throughout the text. one of the things that I found pretty interesting is they use computer to computer analysis to crack the cipher. So because it was found in Germany, they thought the Roman characters contained all of the relevant info, and that everything else were just like spaces or something to throw people off.
Or
that
garbage.
Were trying to, yeah, exactly.
Oh, what they say are
Junk
garbage DNA.
Yeah, I was just going to
DNA,
say that,
yeah.
junk DNA. But what ended up happening is that...
It's just binder.
yeah, exactly. Filler. What ended up happening is that the reverse was true. It was the Roman characters that were actually the nulls and the spaces. And everything else, the abstract symbols, were actually the coded message, which the Roman letters were basically inserted specifically to throw off the reader completely and assume that everything was written in Roman or Latin. So they went ahead and they basically tested the theory, put it into the computer, and the first messages revealed ceremonies of initiation and secret section. So the Copiale cipher is a substitution cipher, but it's not a one-to-one. It's more of like a homophonic one where you have like different types of substitutions because of the text and then the spaces. One thing that I found really interesting by this type of style of cipher is that it's also a cipher that's used with the book cipher or the Beale cipher, which is what's used in the Declaration of Independence, where it talks about encoding of a story of buried treasure. So I was like, wow, even the Declaration of Independence has a cipher written into it that has yet to be cracked. That's the other thing. Nobody's been able to crack that one. But it's similar. The Copiale's, the style of it is written in there, and you'll find out why here in a little bit. So once they were able to decrypt it, they pretty much set up an algorithm so that it could decrypt the rest of the entire text. And they like ran it through like 80 languages, all kinds of, different variations. And then it ended up that it was German cipher all along. So that led them to know that it was the Oculist secret society. Let's see what else. Oh, one thing that I also put in here, that the leading expert on the machine translation, the one from California, he basically is also working on the ciphers for the Zodiac killer, as well as Cryptos, the CIA one, the building thing, the sculpture that's sitting outside of the CIA headquarters, and the Voynich manuscript. So he cracked it. He cracked this one, created his whole algorithms, and is now using these types of algorithms on these other ciphers. So I thought that was pretty neat. And he's funded by the NSF. So, and got some software adopted by Apple and Intel. So
I'd be interested to see what he says about the Voynich.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. So to give you a little bit of backdrop to what was going on at the time when the Copiale cipher was written, 1738, Pope Clement basically issued a prohibition to Catholics from joining any secret order, religious organization, and even went as far to discourage all Europeans from affiliating with any persons or groups, alleging that all these secretive orders were practicing satanic rituals. In response, secret societies started encoding all their documents to prevent them from being persecuted and basically to protect themselves from persecution all around. So the rites, rituals, and ideologies were passed along in coded language to hide from persecution. So I think that's where you start to see the divide, right? That everybody was doing the whole numerology like we talked about in the first episode, and then you see how Council Nicaea is like, no more, y'all aren't doing this, and then 1700s is like, y'all are going to get in trouble if you do. So everything kind of, to me, seems like that's when it went hardcore underground and you started to have hardcore development of these ciphers.
Well, like we were even saying about, I think in the last episode, there seemed to be like schisms of like, this stuff just doesn't get studied or taught anymore or whatever.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of what it said since they cracked it and it was a big deal and was like all over whatever. So it revealed that it was, it talked about rituals and political leanings of the 18th century secret society there in Germany. And the rituals itself appear to focus on eye surgery and ophthalmology, with members not being eye doctors, right? This is what the scientists were saying, that, oh, this is weird. None of them were ophthalmologists, but all of the rituals are centered around the eye and eye surgery and what have you. The Oculists, as they called themselves, were a group of ophthalmologists who were also, according to the document, a group of Freemasons who created the Oculist Society to pass along the Masonic rites that had been recently banned by Pope Clement. So the initiation ceremony was basically, it was like illuminated by candlelight. The candidate was asked to lower himself onto a stool, asked to read a blank piece of paper. When he cannot, the initiate is given eyeglasses, right? And they're asked to read the paper again, and he cannot. So then they take off the eyeglasses, they wipe his eyes down, and at this point, the master of ceremonies pretends to do some sort of eye surgery by plucking out eyebrows. Well, I'd be pissed if they did that to me. But and then they put a paper in front of him that now has text, and then he can read, and they say, congratulations, you can read and what have you. But it was basically the ritual that's being described in the Copiale cipher. And it went on to basically convey that this was indeed a German Masonic ritual. And so Masons, chimed in to the whole thing, and they were like, no, this is an actual, Masonic ritual being described, because it has Masonic terminology, and that the secret society were not ophthalmologists. If anything, it was just eye symbolism centered on Western esoteric tradition. The article basically states that the ceremonies appear to be either of Masonic body or heavily, extensively influenced by Masonry. And they claim that these people were not ophthalmologists, that it was a Masonic ritual, and they were talking about eye symbology, and that it was basically everything that I guess they believe in or what have you. So that was that. And then as you read throughout the rest of the text, and I included like some of the like symbols that they basically used to encrypt some of their messages. If you read throughout the text, it goes on to basically tell you about the different degrees of the ceremony. The different descriptions of initiation, the degrees of ceremonies. It describes the various mainstream Masonry degrees at that time, like the levels or the categories. It talks about key lodges, Scottish master degree. It just starts telling you everything. And it's weird because you would think that all these Masons want to keep this stuff secret. And yes, this cipher is telling you everything. And they have this ritual where it's centered on the eye. I don't know. It seemed really
I think
telling.
that's wild about how much,
Yeah.
all the stuff with the eyeballs. I'm telling you, there's something up with that. It just makes sense to me anyway.
100%.
Occult to ocular. I can't see inside myself regardless.
Right. No, absolutely. Another thing that I thought, and that's the Copiale, that's where they got the name of the cipher itself, because there was that one word that was able to be read of the entire document. And then the watermark, the document had all these watermarks along with it. The other thing that I thought was really cool to mention was that active members of the Oculist Secret Society, according to some of these write-ups, is included members like Voltaire, George Washington, and Ben Franklin. And so if you look at the Declaration of Independence, and they use kind of a similar cipher.
Oh,
yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. And this one, you see the coat of arms of the founding guy. Then this was the actual eye medallion that they gave initiates or people that were of a certain level that you got to receive or whatever. And it has basically the eye medallion in the center, and then it has white ribbon outlined with green. I thought you would find that interesting, the white and the green. And then as well as the coin, which the coin itself features a cataract needle with two cats watching over mice. So I thought, yeah, that's got to be
Rats.
something.
Star.
Could be. And then on the cipher itself, it had something like, only those with a light hand need apply, as a reference to their member surgical skills. But I think that was code of some sort, in my opinion.
That's great. That eyeball is like creepy.
It looks real. Like, it looks very, I don't know. Like, they went into detail with it. It wasn't just, somebody sketching something. It actually looks.
I wonder if that was handmade back then.
Like a real eye. Just kidding.
Oh, God.
Yep. So that was the Copiale Cipher, which I found really cool because I think the whole Oculist secret society, that they even had something like that. Because we always talk about the Masons and the Eye and the Illuminati and all that stuff, and the fact that there even was one.
I think it was even Headless that told me. I don't know if this is it. I think it's a different one. I always get it confused with either Headless or Thrash, which one told me, but one of them, I think, pretty sure told me about that secret society of occultists. I mean, of eye doctors. Secret society of eye doctors.
Yeah,
there was one out there.
They said the other thing that I thought was pretty cool is that they considered them very progressive because they were the first secret society to allow females in at that point, and they also were the members were basically the ones writing laws, writing treaties, writing all kinds of whatever. So they think that these people probably influence a lot of the revolution movements, writings, what have you. I mean, we'll look at the people that were in there. So, okay. Moving on to the sphere of life and death. So at the beginning of Sphere and Life and Death, it reads, if you want to know whether a sick person will recover swiftly or slowly or with intermediate pace, is a description that is found within the diagram cipher called the Sphere of Life and Death. Is one of the most popular prognostic tools of ancient times on onomancy, which is name divination, that uses the numerical value of letters to predict the fate of a person. If you recall in the first episode of the series, alphabetical numeral systems were common during Greek and Semitic languages during this time in history. So onomancy, which has its origins with Pythagoreans, appears in medieval manuscripts as a sphere of life and death. In more modern historical texts of Western literature, the cipher is referred to as either the sphere of Pythagoras, sphere of Apuleius, or wheel of Pythagoras. So the cipher consists of a diagram and instructions to guide the user on how to predict the fate of a sick individual based on their name, as well as predicting the outcome. It can also give you information on whether a soldier or general is going to win the battle, whether or not lost property will be found, outcome of a long journey, or in general, any kind of yes or no binary question. Translation of the cipher from Greek to Latin happened around the 6th century, and evidence of the sphere in the ancient world is found in different manuscripts. Like there's a 4th century Greek papyrus containing magic and divination spells with the sphere included. Syriac 12th century translation showing the sphere had ancient roots, and they show that it enters into the Latin West around 13th, 14th century. So during the Middle Ages, it was very popular that if you attached a famous name, that it gave the document credibility. And I think that's why they use sphere of Pythagoras or sphere of Apuleius. The Apuleius sphere of life and death. Just real quickly, this guy apparently was a author and an occultist. He wrote Golden Ass about magic and metamorphosis, and that's where the story Cupid and Psyche comes from. He also wrote Apologia, which is a self-defense for him against a charge of magic. So he kind of is admitting but saying he's sorry. And in the medical miscellany called Medica from 14th, 15th century England, explained how to use a sphere to predict whether the patient would live or die. And like I said, everybody had their own methodology. So this one that's in front of us right now basically used the letters of a patient's name that were assigned numbers according to the scheme that was written on the outer ring of the sphere itself. To this, the number for the day of the week on which the patient became sick was added and then calculated according to the four corners of the sphere. And then after the calculations are done, you would see if the number would fall between 1 and 30. And depending on where it fell, if the number was on the top half of the sphere, he would live, and if he was on the bottom half, he would die. He or she.
Damn.
Yeah, that's kind of very flip coin type deal. Sphere of Life and Death was found in over 62 manuscripts of late medieval English era, and although it was condemned by many theological and legal treaties, the medical cipher is one of the most frequent contents in all of these manuscripts. So even if it was condemning, it was still being included in the condemnation treaty, which I thought that was weird. But so you had different methodologies to it. Some of them was like you take the name of the patient, you take the name of the messenger that came to summon the physician, you take the name of the day upon which the message came to the physician, join them all together, and then calculate it. If you had
it sounds like how we did our go-go.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And then, like, if the number was an even number, it would equal death. If it was an odd number, it would equal life. So everybody kind of had their own, way of using the cipher. And so I think it just depended on the actual guy who was using it. So on some of these ciphers, you would apply, the name of the patient, and it had a numerical value. So going back to the first episode where we talked about how you assign the alphabet to a number, they're still using that methodology. And then they're also using the number of day of the moon, and and I think it was the day of the moon and the planetary weekday, and they would use the number 1 through 30 because of the 30 days of the moon. And then you calculate it through like lunar tables and planetary weekdays or calculations. And then from that, you would go on to say yes or no or whatever. But it wasn't just used for that. It was also used for like predicting, is this guy going to win a battle, or is he going to go on a great journey or not?
It's interesting. I just want to ask, I could be wrong. Isn't it actually really, though, closer to 28 days for the moon?
I think so. That's kind of what I've always heard, that it was 28-day cycles of a moon.
If that's true, though, that does make me, again, go back to the whole pupil dilation in your eyeball.
The 2 to 8.
We'll go from 2 millimeters anywhere from there to 8 millimeters.
That would make sense. That would make a lot more sense than
30. And that still encompasses the 2, 4, 6, and 8, I say, is total. 2 to 8.
I wonder, and would that give you, kind of like a side note, would that give you an extra month? So it would be 13 months instead of 12 months?
Yeah, there's something up with that.
So
I think there's like 13, technically days, 13 zodiacs instead of 12. Should be something like that.
Instead of 12, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like the difference. Maybe some people don't know between like tropical and sidereal as well. It's like with sidereal astrology, you're going by like the size of the thing, the zodiacs in the sky. Not all of them are the same size. Some are smaller, some are bigger. That one I think actually goes depending on the size of the zodiac sign.
No, for sure.
And the other ones are just chopped up into 30 degrees each, regardless of their size or not.
Yeah. So one thing that I looked this up, on the figure closest to us on the left-hand side, there's slight variations between these ciphers. So like in one of the cipher, if you look really closely, the G on the outer part of the cipher, one of them is like right above the living section of the hemisphere. Whereas if you go to the other side, the G is kind of a little bit lower than the line of delineation. So it's kind of like, depending on what cipher they're using, it's pretty much a coin toss. And I think most people would try to copy them, or they would use other methods to come up with their own, but kind of keeping with the same concept of the sphere. This one I thought was really interesting. So when people started going underground and hiding most of their ciphers, the figure on the left where you see the wheel within text, this is pretty much how they started hiding the sphere of divination and disguised it as like just a table within text. So while the sphere appears to be part of the text in the manuscript, it's actually, in fact, still a divination device.
I think it looks like a Ferris wheel.
To me, it looks like an iris, like the way the iris is, you know, kind
Or
of.
like even some of the churches, when you look up through the top that we covered that we thought was like inside your eye.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And then the figure on the other side was another example of how, like, within the text, and so this sphere wasn't just like, oh, it's this is the manuscript, this is where the sphere is found in the manuscript. No, it wasn't like that. This sphere was put into different manuscripts of different types of topics or discussions. So, like the one on the right hand side, you see a sphere, and the previous page was talking about, you know, the winds and how a regimen of being outside or the winds could contribute to maladies or sickness or whatever. And then you see this insert of this actual sphere or cipher, like out of nowhere. And within the cipher itself, it has the instructions of how to use it being written in it. And then it'll tell you something of like, this is how you do it to calculate the planetary weekdays or the automatic technique or whatever. And then you flip the page and now it goes into diet of curing the patient or whatever. So it was like snuck into some of these texts to kind of hide what it was doing, or what it, you know, that it was even included. Some of these texts where these ciphers are found, they originate from, so the cipher originates from the time of Pythagoras, and it basically said that they practiced onomancy, and that it continued throughout all the way into, you see 14th century Oxford texts that contain this sphere, and that those medical texts were being expected to be learned by medical faculty as well as medical students. So even in Oxford in 14th century, they're being taught this sphere of life as a technique or a tool for divination as well as predicting the outcome of a patient. So that's pretty much it for me.
Awesome. Man, that was a lot from both of us, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot. I mean, it's a lot in there. And a lot of the Masons use, it seems, Freemasons use a lot of these ciphers for their stuff as well, which I found pretty interesting. I didn't know they were that heavy into ciphers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what, like, I was even trying to show with, with the Rosy Cross. Could like even some secret societies have ciphers for their own specific texts to understand what they're saying specifically in their stuff?
Right.
You know, and could that be part of maybe going up the ladder in itself?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could be. Well, I mean, they talked about how the Masons do, I guess, recognize Kabbalah or Kabbalistic methodology, and a lot of this is, the ciphers are based with that in mind. So, yeah.
Well, that was, I had a really good time covering that. That really went well.
That was heavy.
It was
I'm
a lot,
sorry.
but between both of us, that was, I mean, I went longer than you. But that was a lot of information, and that's what I really was just hoping to get out. I think that was extremely informative. The whole thing really, with this whole series is just showing how far back does letters and numbers and how deep does it get. And if this has been going on since how long ago? How do we know it's still not going on now? We just have the slightest clue.
Well, the evidence...
And I'm not trying to say that's all it is out there, but I'm just saying we have no idea. I have no idea.
The evidence of those people being in the Oculist Society, and they were the authors of Declaration of Independence, how much more evidence do you need? I mean...
Look at that machine that I was talking about before.
Exactly. Yeah.
Of course, we're associated with the Germans with it.
Right.
What the hell is up with this? Masters of Magic. You get the MM right there. Masters of Magic.
That's true.
I didn't even say that on purpose.
Wow.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for helping me with this. We had a blast. I really loved covering this whole series. Thank you, everybody who checked out this live. I was, a little hesitant to do it, but I'm very happy I did. That had to be one of the smoothest shows I've probably done in a while.
Aw.
Yeah, so thank you, Lisa. Well, you've definitely helped get us a little bit more, in line here. Not such cluttered anymore, There's some structure. So,
good.
yeah, that went really good, and I couldn't have been happier. Because of us doing this, we will be coming out probably, maybe we'll be able to go live with that, because I think it should be actually easier to cover.
Super easy.
Easier to cover than this. But I wanted to cover some old grimoires. That may be a little repetitive for some of the OGs that are in the chat right now. But again, with that, it was just more of an informative thing, and was just kind of showing like how far back does this stuff go. And I just think that sometimes maybe we don't realize the past, and that's why we're a little confused about where we're heading now. What's going on now. So I'm just trying to do some like older, informative episodes. So I look forward to doing that. Should hopefully be doing that in a few weeks. Oh, actually, if we do it live, it will be next week. So,
It will be.
So people, if people are listening, if we happen to go live next week, we will be recording, I think on Friday, probably around the same time. The Occult Rejects will be recording a Grimoires episode. And be some old stuff in there and some just interesting stuff, Thank you again for everybody who jumped in the chat on this live. That is what's up. I, say it, and I'm going to keep saying it when I go live and when we go live. Definitely check out the chat. If you're catching this live after the fact, if you can look at the chat while you're watching the live, I highly suggest it, because there is a lot of good information in the chat, and sometimes it could be, almost a whole other episode in itself. Especially when you got like Slick Dissident in there. This guy's,
Shout out.
Yeah. So thank you all. I had a really good time, a really good Friday afternoon, and that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.